Hey y'all, it's Steve, Hobo with Wood. I've been absent from YouTube for a little bit, but we're going to jump back in here. Today we're going to be looking at engraving with the rotary. We're going to be using our diode laser to engrave with the rotary, and specifically we're going to be engraving bamboo. So in our last live stream on the Laser Makers Realm, we, Patrick, Rich, and myself all worked with the rotary and created different projects. Now, what I did on air was this bamboo utensil holder, and it's a pretty neat gift idea. Get them up really inexpensive, and bamboo's easy enough to engrave. Don't always get the best markings. In fact, really uneven. Really nice and dark on one side, not so much on the other. Super dark on that one, barely visible on that one. So that's the one thing about bamboo I'm not a big fan of, is you can count on it not being uniform. But there were several things in the live stream last night that even I was made aware of. There are things that I was doing in LightBurn, setting up the rotary, that I was told last night were unnecessary. And I've also had some adverse output when I was entering things, and we're going to explore those and see if maybe you've been experiencing some of the same ill results, and we'll figure out why and what's going on. But also we're going to look at setting up an engrave in LightBurn to do a single-sided engraving on a rotary, and then also to do double-sided engraving, one side and then another 180 opposite. So we're going to cover quite a few things in this, and we're going to explore a few things in this video. So if you want to play with your rotary, hang around. We're going to try quite a few things in this video. So first, we're going to talk about just setting up the rotary in LightBurn, turning it on, getting ready to use it. It's really difficult. First thing you got to do, get LightBurn opened up. Once you've got LightBurn open, if you have your laser menu open right here, where you've got your pause and start and stop buttons, there's a little switch right here that says Enable Rotary. You just click that. Now the rotary is enabled. That's all you got to do. You're ready to use your rotary. Alright, now for positioning the rotary with the MK2 and the chuck, you can come right here to let's see, you go to the move menu. In the move menu, you have saved positions. If you do your drop down menu here, you'll have rotary 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now those rotary numbered positions are for the friction roller. The friction roller has 5 different positions that you can position those rollers spacing between them, and those are the different positions that you would use for the center line for each one of those placements of that roller. If you're using the chuck rotary, you simply select chuck rotary and say go. And that is going to send the laser directly to the head of the chuck rotary on its center line. And so let's watch that again. I'm going to send it back to home. Now all I have to do is say I want chuck rotary and say go. And she's at the center position in the chuck rotary, ready for you to now send it down the x-axis to where you want the engraving to be centered. Now let's talk about that. What is your origin? Where are you using? Are you using absolute coordinates? Are you using user origin, current position? Well, let's take a look at each of those. So we go back to laser controls. Right now I'm going to work within current position. Now, when I'm not using the rotary, I use absolute coordinates. But using the rotary here, and if I'm going to be doing a single graphic, I will use current position. Now, currently, the head of the laser is at the head of the chuck. So, your current position, you can, if you look at LightBurn, you use this drop-down menu here to select current origin, or current position, user origin, or absolute coordinates. Well, you select which one you want to use, but then you have 9 different options right here with these buttons on where you want the origin to be. Do you want the job origin to be in the very center of the graphic or at the top center of the graphic? For me, when I'm using the rotary, I typically use, from just out of my habits, I use current position and center, or I will use user origin and top center. And we'll look at that here in a few minutes. But right now we're going to be doing current position and center position. Well, right now the laser module, it's centered, or it's on its center line, but it's at the head of the chuck. So what you have to do is go back to the move menu and use the arrows to control the laser and move that laser head down until you get into the center of the object you're wanting to engrave. So if you were engraving a rocks glass and she's only going to be 2 inches away from the head of the module, give or take. Of course, you're going to have your engraved surface already chucked up in here. You're going to use the move controls to start using the arrows there and just start moving the laser down until you get it in the center position on the x-axis of the surface you're going to engrave. Once it's in the center position of where you want that engraving to be, you're ready to start sending the job to the laser. So, and we're going to get something in there and chuck it up and actually do some engraving here in a few minutes. Before I go to the chuck, I'm going to need to know some basic things about the piece I'm going to engrave. If I'm going to be doing multiple graphics or a full wrap, I need to know the circumference of this piece. If I've got a limited engraving area, or actually I just need to know what the total length is of the engraved area so I know where to position the laser for center point. So first, I'm going to use my fabric flexible ruler to measure my circumference, and I get 24 centimeters or 240 millimeters. Now this, they've got some kind of plastic dip or something wrapped around the bottom of it for looks, I guess. So I've only got here to engrave. So I'm going to measure, and I'm going to put it in the chuck like so. So I'm going to measure from the chuck to the plastic and how big is my engrave area. And that's 10 millimeters. All right. So 240, or 10 centimeters, I should say. 240 millimeters or 100 millimeters. 240 and 100. Now that I've got that information, I'm ready to go to the chuck. So, I'm going to try and do this, and hopefully you'll be able to hear what's going on. So, I'm going to put this in the chuck and make sure she's secure against the back of it. Now this thing is not cut level. It's cut at an angle. And I'm going to try and take that in consideration when I'm chucking this up. I could go to the belt sander and try to level that out. Wrong way, Conway. That looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna, that's what I'm looking in this. To look at it, it looks like she's not where she should be, but that's how irregular this is cut. And what I'm looking at when I do that, and if you can see that on camera, that's almost, it's a little over an 1/8 of an inch away from the head of the chuck. And that's flush against the chuck. But if you watch across the bottom as that's rotating, it's almost perfect. It's just the irregularity of the bamboo. But it's not walking everywhere. So I'm going to position her about like so, to where I've got these two ears on the chuck at 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock. The third one would be at 12 o'clock, directly opposite, and it's also where the biggest gap's at. I'm going to put her about like that, because that's also where the most of the bamboo meets up against the back of it. I have my laser raised high enough that it's not going to slam into the rotary or the bamboo, and I'm going to send it to home. Now I'm going to use the pre-programmed positions for the chuck rotary. And that's at the head of the chuck rotary. I measured the length of my bamboo, and that was a total of 100 millimeters. So halfway down is going to be 50 millimeters. So now I'm going to put that value in my distance, say 50 millimeters, and tell it to move down the x-axis to 50 millimeters. And because of the irregularity on that cut, if I'm going to do a double image on this one, if I did this one here at this point, it would be high compared to the flip side of it. I'm actually going to take this one another 5 millimeters down, simply because of the irregularities. This is something that you probably would not have to worry about unless you're working with bamboo that's cut core. But that looks better. That position would look good engraved here or here. That's going to look good. Now, what I recommend doing at this point, if you've determined, now this comes into play if you're going to be doing lots of the same image. If you've got a batch job to do, you've got a dozen cups that you need to put the same logo on. If you take the time to set this up now, you're going to save yourself so much work, and you're going to be going, thank you, Hobo, thank you. In fact, here's a super thanks. This information was so valuable. Here is a super thanks, and I should be doing it on all your videos. If you're not aware of that, there is down in the comments below, there's a little $sign there. You can say thank you if you found this extremely valuable and a huge time saver. And trust me, it will be. Once you determine where you want that center position to be on your x-axis, you're ready to start engraving here. Before you do anything, you need to do two things. One, this position needs to be saved. So go into your Move menu go into manage, and you're going to create new or add new. And you're going to create a title for it, and you're going to be give it something that you will know what it's for. And I'm going to name this one current start. Current start. Now, let's see here. Say okay. Now, if I hit, or if I go Chuck Rotary and say go, that's back to the head of the chuck. Current start. That is now saved. That is exactly where you want that to be on every one you're going to put in this chuck position if you're doing a batch of a certain job. The next thing you need to do is from this position, if you're using the Lasermatic MK2, I use a value of 150 millimeters. I set my distance to 150, and now I tell it to go due north or straight up the y-axis, and that clears my rotary, clears any job I'm working on, but it also stays away from the lid and the hinge, because depending on the diameter you're working with, you could have this high enough that it could come into contact with the hinge on the lid. So 150 will clear everything you need. Now with that at that position, go right back to manage, and you need to have one created that says finished chuck rotary, and then say okay. Now what's going to happen when you run the job and it completes its job? If you're running in go back to laser, if you're running in current position, it's going to engrave, and then it should come back, I think, to the origin, job origin, which would be in the center. Once that laser is stopped, it's engraving. Go right back up to move, and then say finished chuck rotary. And it's going to send that laser up the Y and out of your way. You take your piece out, load your new piece in, come back to save positions, and select current start. And it's going to move the laser right back to where you wanted it to be, for the like you just had on the previous job. And now all you have to do is hit start. You're ready to go. It's going to finish. Once it finishes, come back, say finish chuck rotary. It's going to clear it out of the way. So and this is when you're doing batch jobs. And really for folks who are doing a lot of rotary engraving, you're probably doing quite a few batches. You're doing lots of the same logos. So this is a huge time saver. Definitely super thanks-worthy. Especially if you didn't know how to do it to begin with. So set your start position, save it, then create a finish position, working in current position. You're going to engrave it. It's going to go back to the origin and now you're going to send it to the finish position. Now, why do you want to send it straight up the x-axis? If you already have a finished position in your saved positions, but it's something you've been using when you're doing regular engraving and cutting, and say you've got it up here to the top right and it's out of the way, well, if you use that saved position or that finished position for when you're doing rotaries and engravings jobs on the rotary, it could crash LightBurn. Do not send the laser off on an XY movement. Just send it straight up Y. XY but can cause problems. Alright, so you've got that set up. You've got it chucked up. but we haven't made sure she's actually level and focused. So you should have a bubble level with your rotary. And they're going to slide and fall off everything you do. And there, we're just not quite level yet. That's level. We're going to send it to the start position. Let's see, move. Now that you've leveled it, now you focus it. Do not focus it until you level it. Now, you're ready to send a job to the laser. So she's in her start position and ready to engrave. We are going to frame her one last time to make sure everything's cleared. That looks good, and we'll start. Puppy emergency. So that's where she come to rest, back to center. Oh. Now I will go to my laser controls and tell it to move to the finished position. Move, finish, chuck, rotary. Now I'll take that out, put another one in. I've put in the second one, and now I'll need to move the laser from the finish position to the start position so that I can set the focus for this one. So I will switch hands here. Let's see. Now I'll focus, and it'll be ready to start. So now that that's focused and the lid's closed, all I have to do is hit the start button. And we're right back in business that quick. Now, we haven't looked at the using values in those calculators that cause irregular outcomes, and that's what we're going to do in just a second. But I got this off the rotary, and just want to show you the finished piece there. Nice engraving, and then 180, we got that. Now, if you decide that you're going to do some of these bamboo utensil holders, just be aware there's nothing round about these things. And unlike glass figures and the cups and the tumblers, those are going to be pretty much symmetrical, and you can probably 99 times out of 100, if you're going to do two images, do it in one job. I wouldn't advise doing it with these bamboo containers, simply because they're so oblong and so irregularly shaped that you put that first one on, position it ready for that first engraving, and level it so that it's got the best possible focusing. Do that image, then rotate it, go through the whole setup again, level it all again, focus it again, because they're that irregular. They turn out really nice and make nice gifts. This one, and I've got one more to do. These are free giveaways. These are items that were given away during the last live stream on Laser Maker's Realm, where we demonstrated using the Roly rotary. I have two viewers, one drawing, one's going to this household, and I've got one more going to a second household. And in fact, I'm going to set it up now, and we're going to use that one to play with that calculator a little bit to see what happens when you start putting values in. We're not going to ruin any product, because I know what to look for, because it gives you an irregular framing as well. But in that live stream, there was a discussion. It's like, oh no, that's just a calculator, and nothing you do there is going to affect the outcome in LightBurn. Well, my experience has been different, and I don't know what it is that I'm doing, and that's why we're going to dive into it now and find out, okay, what am I doing that's causing this that's not supposed to cause anything? So let me get this other one set up, and we'll start framing the next job. Okay, so I've got my second piece in the rotary. She's chucked up, leveled up. I've still got to focus it yet. But I started playing with the calculator and trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. And I mentioned in the live stream that I'm notorious. I'm bad about telling you to turn right when you should turn left. I know my left from my right, but I will mix them up in a minute. I know the difference between the diameter and the circumference, and that the radius is half of the diameter. I know all these things. But yet I will continue to tell you, yeah, it's 240 millimeters in diameter, when it's 240 millimeters in circumference. I will switch those two, interchange them, and I'll do the same thing with the calculator. I will put in that 240 in the diameter instead of in the circumference, and there's where the problem happens. Now, if it was truly just a calculator and it had no bearing on your output whatsoever, then whatever you put in there shouldn't affect your outcome. But it does. It does. So, if you are having problems because you've been putting values in there, well, you may have been putting the wrong value in the wrong spot, and that's what's been skewing your images. I've been doing it. It's happened to me on multiple occasions. And I'm no professional and I'm no expert, but I've done a lot of these, and I still have that happen to me. So if you're just starting out and you're experiencing this, this might be why. So based on what I've learned from that last live stream and what I know now, don't mess with that calculator. Don't even touch it. You don't need it. There's nothing you need it for at all, because the values you put in there will not help LightBurn in any way. but they could sure mess you up. So don't even use those. Don't even use them. The only time you're going to need to know those values is whenever you're calculating, doing dual images, but you don't need the calculator for that. And I'll show you how I set that up with this image on this tumbler. So take a look at what happens when what happens. So I've measured this bamboo, and it's 240 millimeters or 24 centimeters in diameter. No, and see, I just did it. In circumference. It's 240 millimeters in circumference. And if you open up the laser tools, and you go to Rotary Setup, and you put in here 240 millimeters, and you tell it to test. Well, I'm going to open this up so you can see a little bit. But when I tell it to test, it's going to rotate completely 360 degrees and then come back 360 degrees. And if you was to take and put a little tick mark, you know, at the top here where you're starting top dead center, you're going to watch that tick mark and make sure it comes all the way back to top dead center, and then that's why you know, yes, you've got the right circumference on there. But it doesn't matter. But let's look. Right now I've got 240 in the circumference, and I'm going to hit the test button. So it made a complete 360, moving, looked like maybe half of an inch or so, or on the x-axis, and then the full 360 rotation. Now, I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm going to go back into there to the laser tools, Rotary Setup, and now I'm going to, we're going to zero that circumference out there, and now we're going to put 240 millimeters in the object diameter and tell it to test. Looks like it has no bearing, correct? And it shouldn't have, according to what they were saying in the live stream. That shouldn't matter. Now, let's zero this out. I'm going to cancel everything. I'm going to go back in. We're going to go back into Rotary Setup, and now we're going to put, it didn't matter, zero didn't matter, 240 in the circumference. 240 millimeters is in the circumference, and I'm going to say OK. Now I have my graphic selected, and I'm going to frame it. And now what we should expect it to see is it framed between these two top prongs on the rotary. And I wished I had another camera set up to show you, but this you should be able to see. If we say frame, it framed it in that top area, and it took up the full 60 millimeters between those two prongs. Now watch. We're going to go back into Laser Tools, Rotary Setup, and we're going to put 240 in the object diameter. Say OK, and we're going to tell it to frame. And there, it hardly moved. It squished everything. Frame. So that calculator does affect the outcome in LightBurn. Sorry, Rich. It's not supposed to, but it does. And yes, like we talked about in the live stream, most of the time when there's an error like this or a problem, it's usually cockpit error or a picnic error, person in chair, not in computer. You know, I put the wrong value in the wrong slot, and that confused things. So that's how I've been messing up my images, because I will transpose circumference and diameter, even though I know total difference. I know what they are. Many years ago, because he's a young man now, but my nephew was 10 years old, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and I was telling him which way to go to the restroom, and I was telling him, go down there, and it's on the right. And he got up, and he come back and he said, Uncle Steve, that's not on the right, that's on the left. And that's what I meant. And then he said, You know how to tell the difference, right? And this is my 10-year-old nephew talking to me. I said, how you tell the difference? He said, you hold your hands up like this. And the one that makes an L is your left. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Yeah, I know. But now to this day, if I'm giving directions and telling somebody, yeah, go down there and make a left. Well, I got to figure out something to remind me on circumference and diameter and get that into my head, because I will transpose them knowing fully what they are and the difference, but I'll screw them up every time. So the big takeaway here is don't mess with that calculator. Don't even mess with it. You don't need it, because if you've measured, what you need is one of these. And just about every rotary you purchase comes with the flexible, the fabric, and you most of the time I think were used in garment industry. But these, you can measure your circumference. And that's where I can see that calculator being possibly having its most value. If you don't have a way of measuring the circumference, you can take your ruler, measure the diameter, put the diameter value in there, and it will calculate and tell you what the circumference is. Then once you know your circumference, then you can lay out your graphics if you're going to do a full wrap, especially if you're going to do a full wrap. You have to know your circumference. But if you're going to do even just two 180s, two graphics 180 from each other, you got to know your circumference. So that's the only time that calculator could be valuable, is when you can only measure the diameter and it will calculate the circumference for you. But if you're not careful, that tool is what will mess you up. Get you one of these and measure your circumference. And don't mess with that calculator in any way, shape, fashion, or form. So that solves that. And now let's get this second container engraved. It's a second gift, another giveaway. And I'm going to show you how I set up for a 180 dual engraving. I'm not going to do it because it's still one of those oblong, crazy shaped, but I'm going to show you right now in LightBurn how I do it. There's several different ways to do it. This is just my way, okay? So I've already determined that my circumference is 240 millimeters or 24 centimeters. And if you're, here in the USA, or you're still in the country that's only using imperial, and we work in inches. Well, these little rulers usually come both ways. You got inches on one side and centimeters on the other, and they're in centimeters. 1, 2, 3 through 10. In the metric system, everything is in value or in multiples of 10. So 10 centimeters is 100 millimeters. This measured 24 centimeters in circumference. So it's 240 millimeters in circumference. So what I can do is go in here to LightBurn, and I'm going to start over here off the work table so we can see it. And I'm just going to draw a square. Any square, doesn't matter. Well, you know what? No, I'm not. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, a square. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the aspect ratio on it, and I'm going to tell it the height of that square is the circumference of whatever it is I'm engraving. So it's 240 millimeters in height. That is the total circumference. If you were to take that, cut it out, and then wrap it around, they should meet up. All right? So now that I got 240 millimeters is my total circumference, and I need to position two graphics in that area 180 degrees away from each other. How do I do that? Well, I need two graphics in there and two spaces in between each graphic, one on the left and right of each of those graphics. So I need 4 quadrants, or 4 equal parts. So I will simply say that value, 240, and come back up there to my height and use the division symbol, divide by 4. So that tells me that I have 60 millimeters in height, which actually will be the width of one of those logos that I can position 4 of those around it and have them never overlap. But I only need 2. So now I'm going to create an array. And I'm going to create 3 rows. 3. Well, I need 4 places, right? Yes, if you're going to do 2 images, but watch what I do. I'll take the logo. Let's get rid of this there. I'll take my logo, make sure it's all grouped. All right. And I'll take that one and I'll put it right here in the middle of that top piece right there. Now I'm going to create a second logo. And it needs to go 180 degrees opposite. And just for saving time, I'm going to duplicate that. And then I'm going to come down here, select this one, and tell it to go to center there. Now if you notice, my origin is in the very center right there. And that would work just like it is. I haven't tried it, because what I do is I will work in see, I've got myself confused. Go back to the manual page. Yeah, they want you working in current position, and it will not send it to finish. So I work in user origin, and I put it at top dead center like that. Then I position my piece where I want it to start the first graphic. It's going to engrave it. Then it's going to rotate 180 and engrave the next one. That's how I set up a dual logo. Now, in the live stream last night, Rich mentioned that he did 4 instead of 3. And I think he did... in fact, let's just get rid of this. I think he said he used the center of them. Control, let's see. No, do array and do 4 rows. So, okay. And then from what I understood, he said he did, he took and grabbed that center of that logo right there and then would drop it right there on that center of that line. And then say Control D, duplicate it. Find that center right there. Come down here and drop it right there on the center of that line. And that will produce the same thing. It's not wrong. I'm not wrong. Just 2 different ways of accomplishing the same thing. At least that's the way I understood how he did it. But my brain, being the scrambled brain that it is, just like working with the 3, put them in the center of it, and I'm not sure what origin he uses or what have you, but neither one of them are absolute right. Neither one of them are absolute wrong. They both work. So, what we've learned here is setting up your rotary, leveling the rotary, focusing your rotary. Speaking of focus, I need to focus this. Now I can set my image up and do my first image, but because it's that oblong, crazy shaped bamboo, I'm going to do one, set up my next one, re-level it, refocus it, and burn the next one. So guys, thank you for hanging around. Hope you learned a little something. I learned something. I learned a lot today. I learned don't mess with that calculator. Because if you are screwing up like I do and putting the wrong value in the wrong place, it will skew your image and mess it up. Because I messed up to begin with. So, guys, thank you for your support. If you are enjoying my channel and you're not a patron, please consider signing up on patreon.com/hobowithwood. My patrons are what keep this channel going, and without them, I would have given up quite a while ago. Let me show you what I gave them for, I was promised to them before the end of this month, and I gave it to them last week. I've been working on a file and a design, and I finally got it to where I feel good about it, and I'm going to eventually put it on my website and have this design for sale. But I made a gumball machine. A functional gumball machine. And after designing this and getting the bugs worked out of it, every single patron got this file for free. I then broke off the little tabs on it. I think I'm going to redesign that. But there's 3 levels in patron: gold, silver, and bronze. Gold is the highest, and they get more files and more graphics. Silver gets a little less. Bronze gets even less, or even fewer. But on rare occasions, like when I do files for Laser Maker's Realm, if I design any type of file for Laser Maker's Realm that I'm going to give away on Laser Maker's Realm, all of the patrons usually get those a week early. They have them before Laser Maker's Realm ever sees them. And that goes, if it's free to Laser Maker's Realm, it's free to all patrons. But there are files that I give to my patrons that I don't even put on my website for sale. And then there are designs on my website that are for sale that I haven't given to my patrons. There is no coupon or discount code for my patrons on my website. I give them more than their monthly donation or contribution. But this is really wicked. It is a fully functional gumball machine. And now that I've got my arms broke off here, this gumball is going to shoot right out. But it's a 2-to-1 ratio on my gumball, and I don't know where it's at right now in the rotation. I think I heard it just drop. Nope, there it is. Shoots it right out. I heard it drop and shoots it right out. I'm going to redesign that so those are more stable. But I gave this file to my patrons. So if you like cool stuff and you like a direct line to Hobo with Wood when you've got problems, gold, silver, or bronze, and you've got issues, my patrons can reach out to me and I will try and help resolve any problem they're having that's LightBurn related. I'm not that technical with lasers, but with the software I can, and the designs, I can probably figure out most problems, usually. If not, come up with some really good suggestions. So consider becoming a patron and help support this channel and keep it going into the new year. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you are going to have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will see you guys in the next video. I'm Steve, Hobo with Wood, and I'm out.